We finally have the speaker, Jacqui, which is wonderful. So we will kick off without further ado, I think. That's all right with you.
Yeah.
Do take a seat, Jacqui.
Thank you.
We were scheduled to run till 6:30. I know we started a little bit late. I don't want to prevent anyone from having dinner or going to anything else they were planning to go to. But it'd be good to make sure we get a chance to hear from Jacqui and ask her questions. So is it all right if we run till maybe 20 to 7, something like that?
Thank you, guys.
Is that okay? If people need to go, that's fine, but I think, that gives us a bit of a chance. So, it's great to have you all with us. Thanks for coming. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Smith. I'm one of the fellows here. I spend most of my time doing climate research and looking at climate policy in the geography department. But one of my roles here as a fellow is to champion equality, diversity and inclusion within the college. And so it's really great that we've got Jacqui here. I think it's part of the events we've been putting on to celebrate Black History Month. For the observant among you, Black History Month is held in October, and this is November, but I think we thought it was worth celebrating for an extra 2 days. So I'm delighted we could put this on. So, Jacqui Gitau, you work for aptly UK, which is something you co-founded and lead, and it sounds like you're a real powerhouse in the community from what I've heard of you at the moment.
Oh my goodness.
So I've got plenty of questions for you.
Okay.
But we'll make sure as well that people here with us have a chance to ask you some questions.
Thank you.
Maybe we can start off by you telling us your background. So where did you start life and how have you come to be in Oxford doing what you're doing?
Thank you. So I was born in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. I won't tell you how many years ago. But that's where I was born, and then in 2001 we moved into this country, and my husband came as a student and to work as well, and I found myself having to relocate immediately. We had a 17-month-old daughter, and so we came to do life here, whereas previously we'd have lived in Kenya and I had a job and he had a job, and that would have been life. So so we've lived here for the last 22 years, actually November 2001.
Wow, okay. And so tell us about how aptly UK came about, and maybe tell us a little bit about the things it does.
What we do, So aptly UK was born out of a need, of my own need, and the need I saw around of other parents like myself. So having to bring up a child in a culture which was very different to the one I was brought in myself, because we normally do things based on how we have seen them modeled to us, on the cultures we know, but suddenly we just a 17-month-old daughter, just newly married, so suddenly we're doing life somewhere very different, and so we had to navigate that. We had to work through the different systems. I had to find a health visitor, going to the health center, and then when she started nursery school and there was messy play, I remember writing to my mom and telling her here they have to take children somewhere to have messy play, whereas in Kenya you just open the back door, the child is playing outside, they have messy play immediately. So it was just all those different ways of having to do things, and we laugh at things now, but at that time it was very difficult. It was very difficult losing the network that I had, very difficult losing my friends immediately, very difficult having to reinvent myself. Because in Kenya I worked for an aviation company, I had a job, I was very busy, then suddenly I had to stay at home. And in Kenya as well, we have got people helping you to care for the baby and the children, and it's usually not something you think about. But suddenly here, if I wanted to go anywhere, I had to think, I need to get a babysitter. You just won't think, oh, we want to go somewhere in the evening, let's go. We have to think, can we take the child there? And if not, do we have a babysitter? Those were really new thoughts for us. So together with my best friend as well, who just happened to come to the country, we just discussed some of these things, and we thought, why don't we find a solution to it? And very early stages, I got together with 3 friends of mine, and we started, I like starting things, something called Mama Cooperative. Some of you may know what a cooperative is, getting together and pooling resources and doing something. We pooled our childcare. So together with these 3 friends of mine, we worked 3 days a week each. Then on the other days, you'd be in charge of the children. And we each had a child, and after a while, we each had 2. So that's how we did it, and took care of our children till they went to school. Our children are older now. My daughter is 23. But that's one of the really founding things that I thought, okay, this is a solution to my problem. Then I had to change jobs. because I found that the job I was doing in Kenya, I would be working 9 to 5 or even longer, then it's very separated from my child. I thought this was just for me, it's not for everybody. I thought I needed a job that would allow me the flexibility to be with my child when I needed to, and as well help me to understand how things were. So actually I retrained in an early years and I went training
in early
again.
years education.
Yes.
Early years development.
Very different. Yeah, I went and trained and I got a placement in a nursery school and I really, really enjoyed that. And I thought, okay, this was working with children. And when I was doing that job, I started working in a children's center. This was just before the previous government, 2 governments before. I started working in a children's center, and that was one of my main roles, was supporting families, being alongside families as children are starting school, and that was really felt very comfortable for me, way up my street. And AFI UK itself as an organization was born as I was going into meetings. You may know in this country there is a state intervention in family life. The state, the Section 17 and Section 47, which looks if children are being harmed or abused, then social worker will come and investigate the family. Now, if any families were dealing with that within the Children's Center, I supported them. Went into the meetings with them, attending meetings on their behalf and writing reports and supporting them for whatever they needed. Now, in these meetings, my observation was, if the families were, I would just say native British or anything, some of the issues they'd be facing would be very different from migrant families. A lot of migrant families would say, oh, I didn't know anything about this. I wish somebody would have told me this before. At that time, you're being told you're neglecting your children. It's child abuse, and parents were like, no, I'm not abusing my child. But what they're doing, which they thought was for the best, it was harmful to the child. Now, I started AFI UK because if people are sitting somewhere saying, no, we didn't have this information, can somebody give us this information before it becomes damaging to children? That's how we started AFI UK. I thought I need to start an organization that will work with families to prevent things getting to a crisis point. That's how we started AFI UK.
And I think it really comes through. You have a passion for families, don't you? Particularly, and
yes.
Migrant families.
Yeah.
And it sounds now that actually AFI UK has grown to do lots of different things.
Yes.
I was looking down the list, and there are a huge number of really interesting clubs and things going on. So can you give us a flavour for the different things, and maybe how you've ended up doing those things, because presumably you see them as meeting a particular need in different situations.
Yeah. So AFI UK, what we say is we are bridging the gap. And actually this logo, when I created it, I just had a conversation with, thankfully he was an artist. Somebody, I just told him the vision I had, and he said, did you mean this and this families that are coming here and jumping over? So who is that bridge in there? So that's AFI UK. So we say that we are wanting to bridge that gap that exists between families and accessing what here are termed essential services in education, in health, and in social care. So we will be like the advocate, speak for those parents, provide training, provide information at an early intervention stage within health, within social care, within education. Now, when I started AFI UK, it was what I knew best, because I was an early years educator, working in early years, working with parents. Mine was parenting. I did parent training. So I would get the parents and I would train them, give them the right information. So we have a little workbook we wrote, and that's what we've been using. But as time has gone by, the needs have grown. And obviously, not one person, only one person can't do this. My colleague actually is based in Essex, Colchester. So even though we were best friends in Kenya, grew up, started an organization together, we're in 2 different parts of the country, and we allowed ourselves the autonomy to work where we were. So there is AFI UK in Essex, Colchester, tendering, doing other things there, and here we are in Oxfordshire. But the best way that we have found to work within the community, the people who use our services, after we have trained them, they actually now start supporting others. So it almost becomes like you've had the lived experience, but now you've got the expertise of your lived experience plus training. Now you can actually support somebody else. So the people that work with us are called community ambassadors. Community ambassadors is much wider. It's not just family. We'll have people who are interested in health, and you can support people with health issues. We'll have people who'll be working in housing. So whatever support a family needs to be comfortable and for the outcome to be good for the children. Because you will know some of the major issues for families are housing, education, good food, poverty, and all those issues. So we work with community ambassadors. If there is anybody in those sectors and has a passion to support a family, they can come alongside us and we'll train them on our particular way of working, and then they can be our ambassador to support the families where they are. Those supporting children going to school or parents with schooling system are parent advocates. That's very specific. So they're the ones who will attend social services meetings with parents, meetings at the school, understanding the education system, and just making sure the children have the best outcome possible.
Great.
Yeah.
You touched on how people can actually help, and that's something I'd love to come back to, actually. We'll put a pin in that. But I was thinking, obviously you've come from Kenya. Africa is a hugely diverse continent, right? There's over 50 countries, over 1,500 languages, I think. So in thinking about African families in the UK, is there a particular sort of shared experience or challenge or opportunity that you find sort of unifies all these people coming from these different places and circumstances into the UK? I mean, you touched a little bit on sort of when they're hauled up for neglect. Are there kind of consistent things that you see or consistent things that resonate with all these families?
Yeah, and in fact, I'm really glad we did is African rather than Kenyan only, because then that would be so narrow focused. Because the main issue for most of this family would be their translocation, that migration aspect, that being moved away from home. So now we even find we're supporting families from Syria, from Afghanistan, from East Timor, Asian, Pakistan, because it's that like, oh gosh, I don't understand, what does this mean? So you don't only just translate the language.
Actually broadened out.
It's broadened out because it's that, we're finding it's that migration issue, you've moved somewhere. And I have conversations with people who tell me, well, culture evolves, doesn't it? But now what migration does, where something would have taken 40 years to evolve and people get into it, if you're migrated or you've traveled, overnight, you have to immediately start thinking differently, acting differently. And adults can take time, but children almost don't have that luxury of waiting. They need to go to school immediately. They will need medical attention immediately. They'll need to be cared for in a particular way immediately. A lot of these countries, which now would be known as the global majority countries or the global south, do not have like the state intervention in family life. So if you're taking care of your children and there's any issues, families will deal with it themselves, extended families. But coming to the West, the state will step in. If you left your children alone in the house, or you've disciplined your children very harshly, or the parents have gone to work and left the children on their own, somebody will step in there that's a representative of the government.
Oh, right.
And that's very alien.
So it's almost twofold. There's sort of, there's the state intervention of if you're not parenting right,
yes,
then watch out, the authorities are after you. But then it's also sort of the complexities of life and knowing what things like getting a child into school or getting internet access or getting access to financial resources and things like that. So,
So some of those issues are just things of life, because where you would have been previously, maybe you know what networks to lean on, or you've got extended family that can help. Most people who'd come here, they'd be just that isolated, and certainly where people were collectivists and they had relatives and somebody else would step in, this community may be very fluidly, but quite individualistic.
Yeah.
So deal with it yourself. Who are you asking? Okay, and let's ask the government or that sort of thing. Again, very, very alien to these families. So we step in there and direct them to where the services are, bridge that gap. Once they find the services, we support them to engage with it. Because some of them, it's not just the language that's different. Again, maybe it's needing you to maybe fill out multiple forms, go back again, or speak differently. There are some families and some communities where pregnancy, if a woman is pregnant, you get your babies at 9 months, and that's just, it happens, that routine. But within this country, a woman gets pregnant, you need to get seen, so we got prenatal care. In other countries, they don't do that. And so, but if they're here and they've not done that, then they're found maybe at the 8th month, that's like, what's been going on? Somebody has not been taking care of this unborn baby. And people from this community are like, no, pregnancy is not an illness. Why do I need to go and see a doctor? it's a different
Right.
place.
Yeah.
So it's just that those nuances, but which here we've created a system to protect children, maybe based on the history of whatever reasons, but which somebody comes and would think, why are you interfering with my family life? Let me make that decision myself. And I'm like, no, we're doing this because for this child can't decide for themselves. And suddenly the parents realize, well,
Right.
it's not just you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess some students who come particularly internationally
Yes.
have some of those experiences of dislocation. But yes, we
Yeah.
imagine not having the college community and guidance, coming with children,
Oh,
not speaking the
yes.
language at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what do you feel is your biggest achievement in what you've done so far?
Oh my goodness. I come from a collectivist culture. I don't know how to think about myself. I think, oh, what have I done? I think, what has FUK done?
Yeah. Well, you can answer it however you choose.
No, but
Make it a
I'm
group
learning
answer
to
if
think
you want.
like this because I have children who are growing up here and I'm learning to think like this. What I think, I would say my biggest achievement is having a dream or a passion or a situation and translating it into a solution. And FUK is 8 years old now. So that sometimes I look back and I think, oh my goodness, is it 8 years? It's something I thought, let's just do this, solve this problem and see how it ends. But it's kept on growing and growing, and we have had to think differently to bring in more people to support us with their different ideas, different solutions. So when we started, we did have parent advocates and community ambassadors. Now we do, because it's spreading further. At that time, we were just doing parenting work. Now we're doing homework clubs for children, because it's not just enough to support the parents on their own. Also, we need time with the children. And some of the issues, if the parents don't understand the education system, you can bet those children are not getting anybody at home to support them with their learning or understanding what needs to be done. So again, in that spirit of actually almost like filling that gap, we stand in that space for those children. So our homework club really is run by parent advocates. So it's almost like you get a pseudo aunt. After school, you go somewhere, you'll have a snack and somebody will check your homework. What homework do you have today? Let's make sure it's done. What do you have in school? And these are parent advocates, people who work alongside other parents just to make sure our children have the best outcomes for what they need to do.
So you're proud of the homework club?
The homework club is amazing. So that model of the parent advocates and the community ambassadors is amazing.
And if FUK has been in existence for 8 years, you've probably seen some long-term stories develop, right? Some people who've come in at the start and are now in a very
and now they are
place.
the ambassadors and they're the parent
Really?
advocates. Yes.
Oh, that's
And
very
that, I think,
satisfying.
actually is one of my biggest joys, to see people who came in using our service as a user and now they're supporting somebody else. So they can, it's very good for the person being supported. They can actually be, someone tell them, do you know I've been there? You can make it, look at me now. I know what it means like to have children taken to this school and that school and on the bus or the bike, and you're not understanding what's being said at school, or you're being called for parents' evening. Then you go for parents' evening, you think I'll sit with the teacher and have a conversation, but it's only 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and you're like, I came all this way just for 5 minutes. So like, there's some parents who think the parents' evenings are very short, but it's just like a consulting with the teacher. Places where they've come from, the education, you'll take your children to school and the teachers will do everything. Maybe you'll just check the homework sometimes, or the teachers will deal with everything. But when it comes here, we inform our parents, actually it's a partnership. You have to go into the school. You have to read with your child in the evening. You have to. So that's just those nuances of just supporting the parents so that they get it right for the sake of the children.
And you live in Oxford, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you've lived since you moved over here.
It's the first place I came, thankfully.
Yeah.
I've gone to lots of other places in this country. I like Oxford, I come back.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, we like Oxford
Yeah,
too.
I like Oxford.
I think often people think of Oxford as the university, but there is the city to it as well.
Yeah.
And often we think, Oxford is quite internationally diverse. We have a lot of people who come over to study who are very well educated and are here for research. But actually, it's got different sides to it, and I know it has quite a deprived area. So I was really there are 15 neighbourhoods in Oxford that are amongst the sort of 20% least deprived in the nation. Yeah,
that's right.
And differences in life expectancy, particularly for men in different areas.
Yes.
So, from what your perspective, having moved to Oxford and working especially with a lot of these families.
Yes.
I'm wondering, how do you see the role of the university and colleges in this city in actually sort of fostering more inclusion and benefit for everyone? Because it's interesting, we've got a vice-chancellor right now who actually grew up in Oxford and went to a comprehensive school, and she's been very clear actually that she wants the university to benefit the city as well as
good. I'd like
the world.
To meet her.
So, yeah, well, I'm sure you can, but so how do you think the university is in that context, and are there things that the university could do as a whole, kind of corporately?
It should. One of our current themes this year, we're doing something. We started last year, it's called the Science Together Project, which is the university researchers working with families in the community, and it's usually scientists doing a scientific research theme. So when we got it last year, most communities would have something they think, oh, this is a problem, let's have the researchers help us resolve this. For us, we told them, we'll speak to our children and say, what theme do you want to do? And the children actually came up with a theme, and our theme was, what's your science? So when you're speaking to 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds in Blackbird Leys in Cowley, and you're telling them you're going to spend time with a scientist, they thought of Einstein. In fact, that's what they told us. Oh gosh, scientists are old and boring. And so we knew we had some work to do to change, first of all, that mindset.
Some of them are, I have to say. Not all.
Yes, to change that mindset. I can't be a scientist. That was one. The kids were like, oh, I can't do that. Can you go into Oxford University? Oh, could I? So we worked with these researchers for 8 months. And 1 week, they would come to us in Blackbird Leys, do activities with us, and then the next half-term week, we would come into any of the spaces into the university just to visit and do the researchers. And we said we wanted to be hands-on. It's not a lecture, because the children we work with have to touch the things. So thankfully, a few scientists signed up with us. We got somebody from the Kennedy Institute, we got somebody from the History of Science Museum, we got somebody from the Chemistry Lab, maybe I've forgotten one. But actually, since from March till October, we were having activities each school holiday. They would come into Blackbird Leys and we'd set up our family events, and they would be part of that, just so that they can experience it and get a feel of it. And then we'd bring our children the next half term. Our children went to the Kennedy Biolab, they put on the lab coats, they touched things, and we've gone to the History of Science Museum, and you should see just how the love of learning that those children had. Now, I would say, and thankfully when we finished that project, they all wanted to carry on. The scientists wanted to carry on with us. They said, the project is finished, but how can we carry on?
They enjoyed it too, yeah.
They really got interested, and our children and our families also got very interested. And what I see we're doing, it's almost, they're still bridging this. Yes, we do have, I wouldn't say the town gown devout, but it's almost like, yes, we do have, can we go into those buildings? Who goes into those buildings? That's the conversation I want to happen for our children, because these are Oxford residents. They belong in this city, they own this city. Why should they feel that's not a different part of this? So it's almost like, okay, get familiar with it, see what happens, and then make a choice from what you know. So that's been the journey. I would say within Oxford University, within this city, it's get involved. So some of those statistics that you talked about, they actually are the things which actually are part of my drive. Yes, why should it be that different? And what's going on there? How can we eliminate some of those? And one of the problems that Oxford has, it doesn't have many problems, but one of the problems it has is the wealth problem. It's got a lot of wealth, but it's in pockets, and there's pockets that are very poor. So how can we distribute that? And I'm not just speaking the way that, oh, we'll transfer this, but part of it is just the residents of this city are far and wide mostly passionate about knowing this is our city, what's going on here, how can we do that? So for us as an organization that works in the community with families, with children, and for me now, it's not that they're just migrants, but they're migrants, but actually they belong here. These children, some of them, this is the second generation. Their parents may have thought or escaped something, or some of them may have thought we'll just be here and go back. For these children, actually, this is home now. So how can we make this a reality for them? And maybe even just a reality. Some of your students maybe come, study, and then go back. But some of them love Oxford and then they stay. Many people usually do that. But then how just can we contribute to making this city even richer? Not just financially, but richer culturally. It's actually more diverse than London, some parts of Oxford. It's higher than London. That's something that I would say, wow, and I'm so proud of that. But I want that to translate into a positive thing. So your students can see how, get involved with us, read some of those statistics, let them shock you.
You've anticipated where I was going, which was sort of for individuals. So I think some of us as students won't be around for very long, but are here and very engaged. Some are people who research here and live here. So what are the routes? And I think some people are very keen to sort of advocate in their communities.
Brilliant,
be a role in sort of welcoming in new people and bringing that sort of cohesion, bringing people together. So what are the practical things, whether it's wanting to get involved in AFI UK or whether it's, you know, going back to their own situation, what would be the bits of advice, practical advice you give them on getting involved?
So find chances to volunteer in the city. So within AFI UK, we run a homework club and a computer coding club. So you can have fun working with teenagers and young people. And
when do they happen?
So that happens on Thursdays after school. We have a homework club. So somebody comes in with their homework and they're stuck with it. Have a go doing that and just have conversations with that. So that's one of them. One thing I've really benefited with working with the Science Together scientists, now they've even become my friends, we call each other. It's that aspect of sometimes people seeing things from a different point of view. We've created a partnership. So when we were supporting our families or we're planning a trip, we're planning a project, I'll tell them this is what it looks like, the families, this is what it will mean, and they will bring in their insight. So I think that's really welcome as well. We do have projects, your research might be very interesting to us. Come and have a conversation with us. We can actually, it's just that partnership working together. So volunteer with us. There is a lot of opportunities. Okay, this will be fun. There's not just AFI UK, there is other organizations as well. So there is the Oxford Hub, but maybe some of you I hope know about the Oxford Hub.
The Oxford Hub?
Yes.
Why don't you explain it, just in case people don't know about it?
So the Oxford Hub actually was, first of all, I think student-led, started by student, and then during COVID just mushroomed and grew bigger. But actually, it is where actually the students volunteer and find opportunities to volunteer and within the city, and it's so wide. You can do schools plus, and that's why your homework support will come in. You can be big brother, big sister, or you mentor a young person. You can come. There is much more that happens in the university than in the community. So we collaborate with Oxford Hub. Our parent advocates, that's the parent power, is a collaboration. We work with Oxford Hub. Because AFI UK, our model of working has been always the people who've used our service, we train them. And they become deliverers of the service. So we train some of the workers in Oxford Hub to also become supporters of parents. So we share this project of the parent power. It's called the parent power, giving the power back to the parents. And I'm sure you understand just the elements of power and how that looks like. So parents dealing with schools, they can feel disempowered, parents dealing with agencies, parents who are poor and maybe they're in debt, they would feel like I can't advocate myself or ask for that. But so parent power is when we support parents to get their agency back, they get their voice back, and through the right information, through having someone alongside you until you feel confident to do it as well. So come to AFI UK. If we don't have enough of what to do, I'll link you in with Oxford Hub. There'll be so much more. We'll definitely like your service. And the young people, the children, they like working with young people even more. So they have got the parent advocates and the community ambassadors. They'll call us aunties and uncles. So this is something within our culture. But if they find other young people, that's actually even much more nicer. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jacqui. I mean, I've got other questions, but I wonder if now's a good time actually just to open it to the floor and see if anyone has questions. So yes, I can see a hand there.
Hi. I was wondering a bit more about the children of the migrants and kind of that transition between the generations and kind of what tends to get passed down and what tends to get lost in the transition.
So we call our children the third culture child. So they come here and they will have their culture at home, what's going on at home, then they go to school, they'll have the British culture, then they create something in between there. They create something in between, and which is normal for all children. You'll always find your parents belong to the other generation or the other people. It's very normal, but now with our families, it's even much more pronounced because it's not just the culture or the generation, it's just combined. The nationality is different, maybe for some families, the social understanding is different. The children get it quicker than parents many times. So as you said, what are some of the things that actually miss out? We have found that, and again, one of the situations within our society, so if the society would be hostile to migrants or things like that, some parents may actually not be able to transfer the pride in who they are, their identity to their children so much, because you're just so busy either staying safe or protecting yourself or working, and then till we find it becomes an identity issue to the children. And actually, I don't know whether you read our website or one of the workbooks I've written, is if this third culture aspect is not handled well, it can become a problem, because the children may feel, okay, I don't want anything to do with this culture, but even though they can live that, it still grates against their own culture, their identity. Who am I? Why have I lost this? So we are supporting our families to almost get the best of both worlds, and we can support you to understand that. So we also support parents and to speak their first language to their children, because some may mistakenly may have believed that not only speak English so that you can be good at it, and so some are losing the language. We're actually reminding the parents, actually, no, it's good for your children to be able to speak more than one language, so speak your language at home. So things like language sometimes can get lost, but we're getting better at encouraging parents to use their first language. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So you mentioned this kind of like this disconnect, almost like a disappear with the kind of this idea of science among children, and kind of how you've worked with it to kind of resolve this issue. How does that kind of come about in the first place, that people don't really engage with science initially?
Yeah. And that actually is, I think, a common thing nationwide.
Yeah.
But we've done some of this research. What we found out is the children don't see it represented. Actually, one of the conversations, apart from them just saying, what's a scientist? What does it mean to be a scientist? After we'd explored that, we found, oh, actually, yes, I do know some scientists in my everyday life. But some had never been able to, have not seen a scientist, have not seen somebody that's doing a job in a different sort of area. So if something is not represented to children, they will not get it. They will not get it. And we want them to achieve or to have as wide variety of choices as possible. So science is one of the subjects, even in school, maybe children don't choose it, or they don't do well at it, or they think it's too hard, and then they leave it. But which very sadly is, they could do well, but if they're not either motivated to follow on, their parents don't understand the education system. Remember, I told you the education system in the Southern Hemisphere, the teachers really drive it. And the teachers will know your child is good at this, and they give that to that child and really emphasize on that. In this system, they expect the parents to play quite a strong role. Now, the parents don't even understand how the education system works, even in the choice of subjects. Some children will not even know what choice of subjects to pick, and their parents don't know how to support them either. And in fact, that's another area you could come in really early, just having that conversation with the teenagers about choice of subjects and what that looks like. Because believe you me, their parents are not doing that. They don't know how to do it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
How many families do you work with?
Now, that's a very interesting question, because we work with families. I was just telling our books, we've got like 40 we're working with at the moment we've got our WhatsApp list and things like that. But we've worked with more, because once we've finished targeted work, we'll remove them from our books, but they continue engaging with us. So in the last 7 years, and maybe this is why I need some of you to come in and count for me the last 7 years, find a way of measuring that, because I will tell you, we work with the families and maybe some of the expertise we need, and we do have a lot of teams coming in. It will be very interesting for someone to have some of those stories and gather it from me and tell me, oh, for the last 8 years you have worked with this number of people. But I know we have 40 at the moment in our books. But usually after that's gone, they get out of our books because of GDPR and they move on with their lives. I haven't counted it, yeah. But our homework club each week gathers about 15 children. The room we use only has 12 laptops. So that's the maximum. But when we do events, we can get as many. During Black History Month last week, we had an event till the library said no more can come in. It was 60 people came into the library. It was storytelling with the elders. There were some scientific projects happening in the corners, and the families just coming to engage with that. So, and our name, sometimes very deceptive people. You don't need to be a member. If you identify anything in the African diaspora, you feel you belong. So we'll have Africans, we'll have Caribbeans, we'll have everybody that's identifying with that African diaspora will feel like they're a member.
We did a similar thing, funnily enough, in the college library here, where we laid out books, in particularly from black female authors, and some really interesting poetry and novels documenting people's experiences of being second generation immigrants and so on. So yeah, similar thing. I think that's been pretty popular. I grabbed a book from there. So.
Oh, brilliant.
Rebecca, did you have a question?
I did, yeah. Hi, Jacqui.
Hello.
I suppose
Thank you for inviting me.
No
Everyone
worries.
who backed me up.
I suppose I was wondering, I suppose the one way to summarise it is that there's a lot going on in the world right now, and it can be really tricky to know where to turn in terms of wanting to help. I've always been described as a bit of a bleeding heart for wanting to always get involved with stuff.
Yes.
And it can be exhausting, you know, and I was wondering what is it that motivates you to keep going, and what would be your advice to anybody looking to get involved but need to find that kind of spark to kind of give them that initial push?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I think I also have a bleeding heart as well. So you're looking at this and thinking, oh my goodness, what? Everybody somewhere needs help. But I think I found my thing. My thing was children, and I think because for children I feel they're most vulnerable. They almost can't make choices. Choices are dumped on them. It's decided for them where they live. It's decided for them what they eat or where they wear until they get a bit older. And I feel for me they're the most vulnerable in our society, and I think that's what I gravitated to. And I found they needed supporting. And so when I started working, I was working with children. But I would work in school, then I would go home. And then maybe the issues carry on. And for me, I felt, okay, maybe I need to work with the parents so that the children can go to homes once the parents are sorted. So that's why I shifted a bit. So that's been for me. But I guess for anybody, it's actually find what's resonating in your heart. So you're right, as you're saying, there's so much going on in the world. What's that's tugging at you? Is it poverty? Is it justice issues? And you can fulfill those in very different ways. Some people just feel, I'll donate some money to that charity, check out which charity it is and donate some money. Some people feel I can give my time. And then you've given that, and it's a human thing to actually want to link in with other human people that need it. But I think find that which is making your heart beat, but find it and do it. Don't just not do anything. Find something. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think I'm going to put Millie in a spot if there's no other question.
Well, so I've got one question, and then Millie can be prepared.
Okay.
So I was really struck, actually. You said near the start about one of the first examples you gave was families who come over and parents of children who don't realise that things are done differently.
Yeah.
And that's kind of explained to them. They get hauled into meetings with authorities and they say, oh, I didn't realise that.
Yeah.
And I think it can't be the case that people always think, oh, I didn't realise that, that's a great idea, I'll do that. Sometimes there are very genuine issues about, well, and I think people who grow up in the UK, often it's easy to have blinkers about our culture and how it's different to others, and it's easy to assume that everything is done right here. But if you come from another culture, you can genuinely feel actually that it's done better where you were back home and not here. So what's your experience and advice on actually having good conversations with people where there are actually very different values at stake and people aren't just going to be bought into this being the right way? Yeah,
that's true. And values are values, and values are people's values, and we actually, when we are saying, okay, this is not safe or this is not healthy, it wouldn't be on anybody's values. It's just if it's causing harm. So that's what we look for. Is it causing harm, particularly to either to children or vulnerable people? That's what we look for. So when I'm having this conversation about values to people, and we do need to have that. People tell, oh, that's how we do it, or that's our way. But then we just say, well, have you thought about your child? Or we also give everybody a voice. So what are the children saying? We have opportunities to play with the children or speak with the children. The children can speak and have a voice, and this is just enshrined even in the human rights and the child, that every child has a right to, and some of them that's quite fundamental. That's just that this child can say what they'd like to have. This child can say how they're feeling about this, and most parents, 90%, I want to do things well by my child, but circumstances can get in the way. Or poverty. So I would tell you, like, people who have to work very long hours, or you're working very long hours and maybe you don't have time to be with your children, or when you're at home you're very tired, or when you're at home you're very harsh or you're very stressed. What that's translating to that child, as they get older, they might realize, oh yeah, mom is tired or stressed, but actually the child just think, ooh, what have I done to this person? Why Why am I getting the wrath of that? So yes, we don't deny that there could be situations that could be happening. In fact, when we do work with the parents, we do allow them to tell us, yes, what's going on for you? And we will listen to them for that. And then just say, okay, so how is this impacting on your parenting capacity or on your children? We're not discounting that any of those things are going on, that you're having to work very long hours, or you've lost your job, or somebody's been racist towards you on the streets or at work. But when you come home, have you been able to unpack that or put that somewhere else? So it's just being able to recognize that and that awareness. So some people may have the values of, yes, I've made that decision, I'm the parent, I'm the adult, I'll make the decision, but tell them, okay, actually, you do need to have a bit of a negotiation space, or your child needs to know that you've listened to them or that you're thinking about them, so unpack that somewhere else and when you come home.
Maybe one of the most universal things, if there is a universal thing, is parents want the best for their children and love their children,
yes.
So they want to do that.
Yes, that's actually one of the most universal things we find.
You said you wanted to ask Millie something. Give Millie the last word, maybe.
No, I came with Millie, so you asked me if I could come with somebody. Millie is one of our parent advocates and our community ambassadors. I just thought, yeah, why not? We could come together. Now, I don't know, Millie, do you want to say anything? Sorry to putting you on the spot, but come all this way, yes?
I really don't know what to say, because you say it all. But I could point out that when I was in the training, we have a training called BOMA training for families. And at the beginning of it, we talk about our hopes and fears for our children, and we list it all. And then we discovered as a group that most of us bring up our children just looking at our fears. And that was a striking thing for all of us. A few people in tears, because it's such a, it makes you change the way you start bringing up your children. You stop looking at the fears, you stop thinking about them getting into trouble with the police, experiencing racism, not getting the opportunities out there because of how they look like, and so on. So we had to forget about all our fears and look at our hopes. And that changes the way we are parenting our children. And it's something, I went home and talked to my husband about it, and he was like, okay, I don't like what you're saying to me because you want me to change everything. But it's true, it's something for everyone to reflect. And we have to keep going back to that when we are supporting our parents, to list out their hopes and their fears, and then they just see it right there in black and white that everything they're doing is because of their fears, and we have to change it.
Thank you.
Thank you. She's broken it down very well. Because when you asked how it works, SOAF UK has got 4 pillars. We have got the BOMA, which is the Swahili word for a homestead. And that's where we do our parenting work, supporting the home. Then we've got Jenga. Maybe you know the Jenga game, that building block. That's all our youth work, working with children, and we put that in there. Then we have Heshima. That's the Swahili word for respect. This is our male and women groups, just supporting the specific issues for them. That's the respectful relationships, healthy relationships between adults for the children. And then we have the Uhuru project. Uhuru, again, is the Swahili word for freedom. Now, Uhuru is where we support our community ambassadors, because many of our community ambassadors are not only just parent advocates supporting parents, but they are also community leaders in their own right. So one of the things that SOAF UK now is doing, apart from just working with the parents, we are also supporting ethnic minority community leaders to lead in a different cultural context, to lead their groups and to get supported. So we offer training, we offer incubation of small groups within our organization so that they can flourish. So BOMA is the work we do with parents, the direct work we do with parents.
Thank you.
Yeah.
it's really fascinating to hear what you're doing. So thank you, Jacqui and Millie, for coming over and sharing your experiences and your wisdom that you've gained through that. And it's really fascinating and encouraging to hear the work you're doing in the community. So we wish you all the best with it. I hope that maybe that sparked some inspiration, maybe some keenness to get involved. I see one more hand up there, sort of desperate question. So yeah, go ahead.
India, we kind of have similar issues with capital punishment and like all of those things, especially in like child raising. So I want to I also know that it's a very ingrained part of our culture and it's very hard to get past it. So how do you get the families that you work with to kind of work through those things? Do families come to you to get help, or do you like approach families to give them this training? Because I couldn't imagine my parents going through such a training because they were very set in their ways. So yeah, that's my question.
It works both ways. So we run groups in the community that are open to everybody. So like the Homework Club is open to everybody. During Black History Month, we do it. We've got an English conversation group on Tuesday mornings. We've got a health cafe for women over lunch, having lunch and discussing health. So those are open to everybody. Come and discuss those specific issues. Then out of that, people build a relationship with the parent advocate. So as we are running these groups, our parent advocates and community ambassadors are in the groups, running the groups, observing the groups, building relationships. And if there's issues that need to be picked up with the family, we follow up later on and work specifically. But thankfully now we are also able to get referrals from social care who've got families, but it's still very much a voluntary aspect. We want people to want to work with us. So the first thing we do, we introduce ourselves to the families and say, and actually one of our strengths is that we are African. So somebody might come and think, oh my goodness, I'm Ugandan, I don't want any Ugandan people knowing my business. We say it's fine, a Nigerian worker will work with you. Or you're in Oxford and you're feeling people in Oxford will know me too much. We've got a small team in Swindon. They can work virtually with you. We've got the team in Essex. So we are trying, but though we are really based in the community, we want to be aware of some of the issues that are going there. And some families, as you're saying, like your parent was so stuck in their ways, they need to be able to agree with it. But if it was a place where now it would be like it's causing harm or it's really causing problems, they're really stuck, while we really just befriend them and invite them to the groups and provide all these different supports, services. And our parenting group, I'd like to say it's very informal. We have breakfast together, first of all, we eat together, and then discuss what are the issues for you. And people will talk, okay, and just point them, this is how this is impacting on you as a parent, this is how it's impacting you and your child. And just move it from there. It's, yeah.
Okay, we should wrap up there. But thank you very much, Jacqui, for taking the time. And yes, all the best with your work as you continue to help many people in their lives. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Each of you, welcome to AFI UK. My email address, send me an email. If you want to visit us anytime, you're welcome. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.